Last year, I hosted the first ever Olive Jam, and it was fairly successful. So I did that again. But this time, it was less successful. See, through the power of both poor planning and democracy, we chose the worst possible week to run the jam. This was because 3 major jams all happened within the time frame we picked. Those being the ICO Jam, the Pirate Software Jam, and the Polymorphs X Squarespace Jam. Meaning only the most dedicated and the most questionably talented people made games for the Olive Jam 2024. And that's how we got jams like this. But no matter how bad a game may look, that doesn't mean the work was for nothing. There's actually a surprising amount to learn from these games. Things from common mistakes to actually interesting design. So yeah, let's take a look at the top 3 of these very attractive, because that was the theme, games. Coming in at 3rd place is Magnet U by ZCK Best. In this game, you play as a little magnet that pulls in random clumps of metal that kill you upon contact. The start of the game is actually pretty cool, having some nice camera work and funny bits of dialogue. Though some issues start to pop up immediately. For one, the game clearly needed a bit more time as some assets are unfinished and some things are just bluntly unpolished. However, the core gameplay is actually fairly fun. Where the fun starts to wear off is when it gets ridiculously hard to beat a level, so hard in fact that you just quit. Just what happened to me. I just walked straight into it. Dang it. Now, I just go through the walls. I'm at negative 11 points. I dashed through the wall because nothing else can... Oh. Overall, while flawed, Magnet U takes an interesting approach to the idea of magnets, but suffers from a few minor missteps, which is why it got 3rd place. Coming in at 2nd place is Leprechaun Soup Demo by Data Potato. Now, for some reason, the top 2 entries barely qualify as games, and if anything are more so sandboxes or simulations, this being the first of the 2 more so. In this oddly satisfying experience, you could only really move around and cause nearby objects to go flying. There are coins to collect, but there's no win condition. The game was actually made in only a few hours, which I can commend, but I have to ask, what's the point then? If you can't lose and you can't win, there's nothing you really get from collecting coins. What's the point? Why play? Just doesn't make sense. But what's even stranger is that somehow, even with no goals, it's still oddly fun. There's something strangely nice about flying around in the soup bowl while knocking into things. I can't quite place my finger on it. I don't know really, and I'm quite confused. So I'm just gonna move on. But that's the game that got 2nd place. And now what you've been waiting for. What is the game in 1st place? What game is so good that not only could it beat a magnet game, but also the entire power of soup? Well, that game is Madtractive by Alimatco. Now, while this game may have gotten 1st, I have some gripes with it. Firstly, how do you get points? I played this game for nearly 20 minutes and could not figure out how to get a single point. According to the game, you need to create planets that orbit in habitable zones. However, as far as I can tell, there's no indication whatsoever of what a habitable zone is. Also, can you even consider this a game, really? It falls into a similar conundrum of the soup game, where the game in it is somewhat hard to find, and I would argue even more so with this thing. In fact, I would argue this makes a much better simulation than a game. Looking at it instead as the simulation it is significantly more interesting. The way planets orbit around the star and how they interact with each other is actually quite fascinating and could easily be expanded into something much more complex. The options to mess with the colors and speed of the simulation help add to that interest and that control that allows you to just mess around. While not really a game, it doesn't distract from the fact that it is fun to mess around with the various layouts of planets and whatnot. This combined leads to a conflicting experience, where it begs to be one thing, that being a simulation, but it was made with the intent of another, in this case, a game. Though the project does suffer from an identity crisis, that does not detract from how deserving it is of first place among the entries. And that's the result of the Olive Jam. Personally, my favorite game was probably Magnet U, as it just felt the most concise to me despite its unfinished state. But yeah, you can check out all of these games at the link to the jam below. But that's that. Hopefully next year we pick a less competitive time for the jam. Bye!